Art. Why? So why is there certain episodes you didn't want to cover the topic? Because I know yeah, it seems like you utilize when he's out or one of the other one is out to cover a topic with somebody.
Um,
Not that you do it all the time,
no,
but I've
no, no.
caught that you guys did
There's
it a couple
there's there's
times.
some episodes. That was one. I think was it the Bakersfield 3 or whatever. Didn't you guys cover something like that?
Oh, the Lords of
The
Bakersfield.
Lords of Bakersfield. Um, just things that don't interest me, to be honest with you. Like I straight up tell them like, hey, this is a good opportunity for you guys to cover Chris Benoit's murder or whatever. Like, just like, because I'm not gonna be there. And it's seriously just that. Like, it's not like anything like, oh man, I can't. I know Jamie, and it's gonna hurt me if I hear it. It's nothing like that. But it's just I just that one was cool though. The Jamie Asuma, like I would have wanted to be part of that, but I was just in Hawaii for that. So, but there's episodes that I'm just like, nah, I'm not gonna bring anything to this, like
I see.
nothing serious to this. So,
Is there an episode you done that kind of changed you? Just like your perception of like your habits or something you do or just kind of changed you because you're like, you know what, I didn't really thought about this shit or
yeah, there's been a few episodes where I walk into it and Jacob was like, hey man, let's cover, X, Y, and Z. And then I'm like, I don't know, it's gonna be kind of lame. And then we do it, and I'm like, dude, this is like riveting, funny, like one of my favorite episodes. And then vice versa. There's been episodes where I'm like, dude, this is gonna be like, dude, we're gonna cover, whatever, and then we're gonna kill it. And then we walk out of there and we're just like, oh man, like we both kind of know like it wasn't our finest work, and it's just you just know. I'm sure you've done plenty of episodes where you just know like not my best work, not like not my most memorable thing. People aren't gonna be doing like writing to us about this down the line type of thing. When we did what's the one that we got like a lawsuit over?
Oh,
I can kind of tell like it's probably not in Jacob's wheelhouse, but I was like, let's just do it. Like let's give it a shot. And the fact that like weeks down the line it became what it became, and like it became part of
the mythos.
the mythos of um probably shouldn't be saying her name, but but
oh, I'm gonna figure out how to
just
bleep.
like bleep that
There's
part.
a
You could say it, but just bleep out the name or whatever, or at least the last name. But like, but it became like,
it's one of these. I don't know which one it is. Oh, he can't hear it. Oh,
oh,
yeah,
I
yeah.
can't hear.
I was
Was
saying
it
all
like
kinds of. I was
fart
saying.
sounds or something?
I was trying to find the. There's somewhere on here. I don't know what the fuck. There's supposed to be a button
Just
here.
say it, because I mean,
Yeah,
just say
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine,
So yeah. I mean, it's not like I regret it. I just don't want your show to get pulled or anything. But
just don't put it.
So
in
they
the
just
show
don't want
notes.
their name being said on the internet.
It's a weird. It's on the YouTube, but it's not on the audio for whatever reason. But just watch that YouTube to get it, because it's a whole like just to explain it to you, it'd take an hour. But it's one of those like weird internet lore things where
yeah, and I feel like I bring a lot of those where I'm like, dude, I kind of want to give stairways in the woods a shot, and then that's another one where you got to push mafia down the line kind of thing, where it's
Yeah.
like Jacob's like, I've been trying to cover mafia for a while, dude, like, and like we're doing Pavin McCord and stairways in the woods, and like just things that would be kind of disposable and dumb episodes, but I feel like and sometimes I'm scared because I'm like, dude, this might be dumb, and like Jacob might be like, dude, I found like only like one article online, and it might blow up in our faces, but they've been some of my favorite episodes. Or Jacob will bring something and it'll be like, dude, that was really interesting. Actually, just the other day when we were coming up for ideas in our Halloween episodes, what's the one for the Queen? Bathory, yeah. So like that's an episode, it'll come out sometime this month, but I was like, dude, that's perfect. Like I would have never thought of covering that, but it's gonna get covered here in a few weeks or so. I'm not sure when, but definitely like that's like the good thing, that's like he's definitely thinking of Halloween in a certain way that I'm not thinking of Halloween in that way, and I don't know, it's a good relationship on that end.
Yeah, it's a definitely like a yin and a yang kind of thing. Like you hit it the mark on the nail on the mark. Like I would have like covered Jeffrey Dahmer like episode 10, and I feel like we wouldn't have been as strong on episode 10 to cover Jeffrey Dahmer. Whereas Art's like, nah, let's wait for the right time. And when we covered Jeffrey Dahmer, it was the right time because you had the Netflix fucking show come out. Uh, we're as good as we're gonna get like at covering stuff. We're like, I'm gonna do probably too much research, and he's gonna bring like the human element into it, and it's gonna be very entertaining but informative kind of thing. So he's good in that respect. But then you also pick stuff that I never would have known about or thought about, which makes it interesting for me because like everybody knows like, you know, conspiracies like the moon landing or JFK, like the magic bullet and shit like that. And that's where like my mind goes, like when I hear conspiracy theories. But Art's like, dude, there's this thing popping off on the internet right now, and it's called QAnon. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, is this like Queer Eye for the Straight Guy or something? And so you look at it and you're like, oh, that's crazy. And then it fast forward like a year and a half down the line, these QAnon fucks are like storming the Capitol. I'm like, damn, this fool was like on top of it from like day one. So there's that aspect of it. But then on my aspect of it, I bring like a whole different world where like he kind of mentioned it. Like I'm pretty big like into pro wrestling and like things like that and like obscure like comedy shit and whatnot. So we kind of like come together like butt cheeks in that regards, where it's just like there's two different worlds that come together, and it kind of makes the show what it is, kind of thing. It's never a dull moment, and we got like this episode list that is just eternal. And I guess we're just gonna keep doing this podcast until we're in our 60s, because it's like there's never a shortage of shit that we could cover. Like we were even talking about it last week, or we still haven't covered John Wayne Gacy, who's like one of the most craziest serial killers, and that's in the pocket somewhere. You know, like that's another ace in the hole. Like, you know, anybody else probably would have already covered it, you know, like 5 years down the line.
I do think that. Yeah. I do think that a lot of podcasts kind of blow their load early and like end up having to cover like, you know, the history of shoes down the line, and it's just like, oh man, like I'm not trying to hear about the history of shoes. Like,
You're not gonna do it like a remastered or something, or you like you guys like the second time you talk about Jamie Osuna or something, because now there's more details. Or
we did QAnon 2, and I never thought we would have done when we did QAnon 1. When I pitched QAnon 1, like I would have never thought, hey, down the line we're gonna do QAnon 2. So maybe there might be like part 2 to episodes. That's always a possibility. It's really just like, if it's something I suggested, I'm always down for part 2. It's always just how Jacob feels about it, because there are times that I bring something and I'm like I'll give you an example. Another episode that's gonna got pitched to Jacob was this app called Randonautica, and it's totally random, and it's something that's like happening kind of like in the internet, like in the background of what's going on with like people finding like random scary places in the world thanks to this weird app that people are downloading. And whether Jacob finds it interesting or not, I think that'll determine whether it ever gets a sequel to it. And so, because for me, it's like I'm already sold. I'm already like drinking the Kool-Aid or whatever. So like, or vice versa, I guess. Like if Jacob brings something and it's like, oh, dude, we're covering the Redeem Team. Well, what if we cover the 2004 team with like where they fell short with Allen Iverson and Tim Duncan type of thing? Like I'm always down for that. Like I'm always down to shoot the shit on sports. But like, yeah, I guess everything has a potential for part 2. I don't know about remastered though. I kind of like that there's like shitty quality episodes out there. Like I like leaving those out there, but I don't know.
Where do you guys want to take the podcast? Where would you like to see the podcast go?
It's more of a Jacob one.
Oh, you want me to answer this one first?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay, I guess.
I
It's
guess
like,
I'll take a stab at it too. But
yeah. Well, yeah. For me, like, I've always said this. Like, one of the primary reasons why I started the podcast was like a good way to stay like in touch with like my friends. Like, the early episodes, like you heard like a lot of like friends come through. Like your good friend Monica came through, our friend Greg, our buddy Ben. Like, and you hear us do like imitations of like another friend. Hey, dude, like that. These are all inside jokes of like,
and they're hard to, because like sometimes I'm like, why does he make those voices sometimes? I'm
Yeah.
like, what's that about?
And it's
At first I
funny-
thought it was like a Kermit kind of thing, and then after that I was just like, no, I think there's something more to that. And then I know you do it. Who does the Alex Jones?
oh, we both do.
It goes back and forth. Okay, maybe that's why.
Okay,
But I'm
folks, let me tell you this right here. Yeah.
There's a lot of Alex Jones references, probably like every episode.
Yeah. Whenever like there's like, and no offense to anybody who's Republican or conservative, but like whenever there's like oh, that was a dumb like conservative train of thought, it's like that automatically it jumps to like Alex Jones or whatever, right? Or if it's like a pussy like, I guess liberal or whatever, then it's like,
whatever.
yeah,
Anderson. What is that dude's name? Something Tucker.
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson.
Yeah. But like, I mean, we switch like whoever in our minds like comes to mind, like when we think of somebody like of those ilks, that's when we jump into it. But I mean, to go back to your question a little bit,
No, don't worry about it. We'll keep doing that.
yeah, oh yeah, I do it all the time. I have random thoughts all the time, but it's a way to like stay in touch with friends, and it's like kind of like a way to like share shit with friends too. Like all those people that we have like hidden jokes about and whatever, like those people listen to the episode and like they'll text message me like, oh, why'd you have to say that or whatnot. I'm like, but it's like a cool inside joke. So in a way, it's a way to, as we get older, like I feel like friendships start to not fade, but like everybody gets busy with like their own lives, like as opposed to like when we were in our 20s, like going to Denny's at 2 o'clock in the morning or going to concerts or Dodger games or whatever, right? Like those things become further and further in between because like we live our own lives. Like I have a kid and he's got a girlfriend now, and like you know, your lives become consumed with whatever else is in front of you. Like we work like big boy jobs now as opposed to like working at Target. So it is a way to like stay in touch with friends, and I very much want to keep the podcast that like a very like, all right, keep the people in our lives close by doing like, hey, let's have so and so on to talk about this topic that I know they're passionate about. But then also too, making other friends. Like I referenced, you know, we have people that we know like in South Africa that listen to the show, people in Korea, people in Ireland. Like those people have come on to the episode, and it's kind of, I love that element to it where it's not like we're the artist and you're the fan and whatnot, right? So go buy my supplements at Infowars.com kind of thing. It's not that. It's just like, oh, okay, like Copper Kelly, like he's our buddy from Ireland. It's like, hey, you like Slipknot? Like, tell us what it was like growing up with Slipknot in Ireland, and like let's talk about this album. Or he wants to jump on and talk about Skinwalker Ranch with us like later on down the line. And like speaking of part 2 is like if there's ever a part 2, and I'm just like, yeah, sure. And to me, like that element of it, like that family element, like that's cool. And we kind of touched on it before we started recording here, where I don't want to get too big where it becomes a job. Where like I gotta mail out T-shirts, I gotta mail out stickers, I gotta make sure, you know, I do this, that, or other. I gotta go take a flight down to Austin and go do the Joe Rogan experience, which I mean would be cool, but like I don't want to like get into it to where like it becomes something outside of a hobby and more of a job. So if possible, like we can just make the podcast just better, but like not too better to where like we're like, hey dude, like this is now I have to put this on my tax return now because you know, kind of thing. I gotta pay taxes on this podcast. Like we're not trying to do that, but at the same time, like make
You just gotta get an accountant.
yeah,
Get an accountant, and you'll.
Well, I am the accountant. I went to
Bro,
school for that.
Bro, you're gonna be spending at that point. You'll be like, oh, this is my. So one thing in comedy, they have you can put on your taxes, but you got to make money at a level that I've not nowhere close to make. But so what comedians will do, and you'll see like a lot of rappers do as well, is that and when they go to court, they'll call their personas, their characters, and so they'd be like, oh, I'm not
Like Alex Jones.
yeah, you know, so or like myself, I would be like, oh, I'm Iceberg, and everybody knows me as the fly guy, right? So I got to have all this gear, and so you can discount it on your taxes. It's considered wardrobe.
That's
jerseys.
I buy a lot of
You
jerseys.
just-
The jersey
You
thing.
can do prizes, you can do all that. All that shit's like you guys could go out to eat and shit, and call it a business meeting and shit, you know.
The jersey thing is kind of a funny thing because I don't know if anyone even on YouTube knows it, but like I've been wearing jerseys as this like running. I don't even know if it's like a running gag or something, but
I've never really paid attention to what you guys are wearing.
well, he just wears like
'Cause it's always just
regular
one time.
clothes, but like I've kind of started wearing a different jersey to like every recording or whatever. And
Damn.
then I don't even know
expensive.
why. I don't even know why you do that anymore. But yeah. Anyways, but as far as like
It's
what
from your Sábado Gigante days, bro.
Sábado Gigante,
Like, I gotta switch it up every week.
I don't know. I like sports, but it's funny because like we rarely talk about sports. Besides like the sports episodes in our Patreon, we'll be like, oh dude, the Clippers just fucking like, you know, committed suicide. The entire team did, but like it's I don't know why that happens. But as far as like what I would want out of the podcast, like I think we're already doing what I want. Like I want it to be fun. I want it to not feel like a job. I want it to just like. I just want to show up and have a good time for like the hour and a half that we record or 2 hours or whatever it is. And I think as far as that element goes, I think we've been pretty successful. Like there's been episodes in like there was a time period I think where if to me it felt a little bit dull. Like it was becoming a little too regimented. Like and like I didn't know how to like. I remember telling this dude like I just don't want it to feel like a job. I just want it to feel natural. I want it to feel loose. Like I want it to just show up and have a good time. Kind of like this. Like there's no plan. There's no notes in front of us. Like I just want to show up and like let our personalities like come through the microphone. And I think that we've gotten better and better at that as like, you know, not to just be like off the wall and be like we're talking about, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer. All of a sudden we're like, oh dude, like so and so farted, and that turns into like a whole side tangent. I think we did that too much at some point. Now I think we're good about like, you know, staying on track and still showing our personalities. And like it took us like 100 episodes to figure that out, but I think we're getting better at it. I think we're kind of, in my opinion, I think we're already where I want to be, which is like having a good time.
I think as like an observer myself, because I've been on a couple podcasts, and I've had my own podcast, but I know there's something about just like watching a podcast. And when I watch a podcast or I listen to a podcast, I do sometimes start catching that their like personalities are changing, their dynamics changing, sometimes for the better. Other times you're just kind of like I used to listen to this Raider guy, and he was one of the first when I was doing comedy. I just sent him, and then which was what I'm doing now. And people respond, they're like, "Yeah, I don't know you. I'll show up at your house and shit." And like, and so
I low key was just like, I hope he's not gonna offer us like a drink like Jeffrey Dahmer, and all of a sudden like my family's gonna find like my kidney like by the bluffs or some shit. But I'm like, he's on my Instagram, so he can't be that bad, you know.
I figured someone you knew would know me eventually, somebody. And I was like, someone has to know.
Probably
like,
Ben or Monica. Or...
So I know for myself, the people I've asked over, I've either like observed them for some time to know, like, I don't think they're weird. Because that's what all the people I've invited to be on here is all people from IG. But I'm going to go off on a tangent. You watch people, and sometimes you do see like the show's changing, and you're like kind of like, oh, I don't like that part about that show, man. Like, what the fuck? And so this Raiders one I used to listen to, the dude would talk stats, and I've never really liked sports that much, or where I just liked the Raiders, and I'd watch Raiders games. And so I never really cared about names and stats. And so when I was listening to this dude, like the way he broke it down of like how he would say like, oh, everybody's talking trash about Carr, but if you look at this number and you look at this, he's actually doing well. We're just like, as a whole team, we're sucking. That's what sucks here. And so I was like, oh, that's a different way to look at it. Like, instead of like, fuck this guy, you know, he should have fucking, you know, ripped his arm off trying to do this or some shit.
Hey, fuck, if we're in fucking East Bakersfield, I would have fucking buried him in the orchards with a Jamie, Like...
Jamie his ass. And so I just kind of like, that's kind of sucks. I feel like, oh man, like I don't want the show to change. Do you guys get comments from people telling you guys like, oh, don't do that segment or do this segment?
Me, not so much. I'll just get random things. It'll be like, can you guys talk about like some weird thing? Like, can you guys cover the Brazilian Holocaust or something like that? And I'm like, nah. But as far as like, I like this, I like that. He probably gets more of that.
Yeah. So I do all like whenever you message Art and Jacob Do America, like wherever, you're talking to me, and so like I'll get that stuff too. So like it's no secret like we both like politically lean left. We're a couple libertards, as you can tell. Bunch of soy boys over here. But it's weird because we'll get political on stuff, and for the most part, like when we get political, the majority of the listeners that we get for like those political episodes, a majority of those listeners are like very conservative, like from the total opposite end of the spectrum or whatever, right?
I wouldn't say you guys sound. I'm conservative. You know, I wouldn't say like off the bat. I would think you guys were like liberals or anything.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it's the Bakersfield in us coming out. I don't know. But we'll get like the blowback or whatever from it, and it'll end up just being like a conversation, like a friendly conversation, like which I think is healthy. Like where it's just like, well, this is why I feel the way I feel. Why do you feel the way you feel? Oh, okay. Well, that's understandable. And I think that's another good thing about the podcast. Instead of like people just like living in, you know, stuck with their heels stuck in the sand kind of thing. Like we learn from each other by having conversations. It doesn't always have to be a debate or, you know, us going at each other's throat like, no, you're dumb because this fucking happened or whatever kind of thing. It's just like, well, okay, I could see why you would think that. Like for example, we did an episode about guns. It was a part 2 to an earlier episode called The Gun Show. And you know, obviously they're like, you guys don't know shit about guns. I'm like, yeah, no shit, because I grew up in East Bakersfield where if you had a gun, you were either a police officer or you were a gang member. There's no reason to own a gun in East Bakersfield unless you were one of those two things. Now, my cousin, he moved out of East Bakersfield to Montana. Now he lives in Idaho, right? Out in, you know, the where you need a gun because the grizzly bear might fucking break down your door and fuck you like Leonardo DiCaprio. Which makes sense. Or, you know, their pastime, like on Sundays now, is like going out and hunting and whatnot, which makes way more sense than it does, you know, in like the city or whatnot, right? And so when you break it down like that and you have those kind of conversations, you get to see from different perspectives of where people are coming from, as opposed to be like, no, you're dumb because you want to take away all of our guns. You want to eradicate the Second Amendment. And it's like, no, I don't. Like, I just, you know, think that if you live like in Skid Row, LA, like you don't need to have an M what is it, fucking M16 or whatever like that. It doesn't make sense for that scenario, but it might make sense in, you know, West Texas or East Texas or something, you know.
I think that's one of my favorite things and why I've always enjoyed the podcast. I think you asked me earlier like how I got into podcasting, and I talked about Canoodle Studios and getting invited to do other people's podcasts just by being on the radio. But I actually remember now, back when I was in college, I had a friend. We would drive around sometimes just because we were bored, but I didn't have a radio. I let this tweaker try to install this stolen radio, and it just I got duped. You know what I mean? I just got jacked, and then so the stupid shit wouldn't work, and so at one point I took it out, and then it was just wired so fucked up that I just kind of just gave up on it and left it. So whenever me and my friend would be cruising, we would have to talk because there's no radio. So we're constantly talking about shit. And it got to the point where one time he was like, we should be recording this shit, bro. We always said crazy ass shit. We should be recording it. So we recorded it one day. And so we recorded it and we went off like on a tangent. And then he was like the first dude. This is way back in the day. This is like before 2010. And so he was like, you just put it on YouTube. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, put it on YouTube. And so I knew what YouTube was, but it wasn't like something I was watching all the fucking time like now. And so he put it up, and I think we liked it, bro. It was kind of funny. We ended up doing like, oh, let's do another one. So we did another episode, and it's somewhere out there, bro. I don't know if he took it down, but it's somewhere out there. But it was, the first one was we're cruising to the mall, and I was just talking about, I was saying some racist shit about Asian people. And then another time we were cruising, and my nephew wanted to go with us, and he was in the back, and I think I went on a tangent about like tying a girl up or something. Like, yeah, you just tie her up, bro, and blah blah blah. And I just said like I was just trying to say some like grunge crazy shit, you know. And then I just realized like I got my nephew in the back. He's like young. I shouldn't be saying this shit. So I just kind of paused it, and I was like, hey, I'm just joking, bro. Like, don't ever do this shit. And so we just ended the episode there.
You were Jamie as soon as his mentor.
Yeah.
That's
But and so I've always enjoyed talking to different people and trying to just shoot the shit about stuff, because I think even like he's talked about politics. I think sometimes people have a perception of politics. Like for myself, I'm conservative. I would consider myself like a pretty stern Republican. But at the same time, when I meet certain people and they'll be like, "Oh, you're like liberal," and I'm like, "No, you just have a perception of that fucking crazy Republican dude who's just out for votes and, you know, money pockets, and he's saying random fucking shit that don't, like, we don't, as a Republican, you wouldn't believe that shit, you know. You just are. I'll give you an example. So one time, DACA, when DACA came out, right? DACA came out. And they were like, oh, we're going to do this, and we're going to try to get people enrolled. And then it became like where like they were going to close it or something, and people had to apply as fast as they could. And so I was like, oh, I'll go help out with that. And so I went to the United Farm Workers. I used to volunteer for them a long time ago. So I went to go kind of check in too on my friends and see how everybody was doing. And then we started talking, and then they were like, there was like younger, newer people working there, right? The older people I knew had gone to headquarters or somewhere else. They had moved up in the world. And so I'm talking to these younger people, and they were like asking me these questions. And then I was talking about, yeah, I knew Robert, and I knew so and so, and Fatima, and all these people. And they're like, oh, blah blah blah. And then they kind of paused, and they were like, wait, because I think I had said something about the Republican Party or something, something Republican, and they're like, oh, wait, if you're Republican, why do you want to help us? And I was like, huh? And they were like, why would you want to help us? And I was like, why wouldn't I help you? Like, I don't understand your question. And they're like, well, because you're a Republican, why would you help Democrats? And I was like, this isn't about Republican or Democrats. This is that I have a stance on the proper way to immigrate here. They didn't follow that. But now that they're trying to follow a different method, and it's legal, and we've voted on it, and even though maybe the majority of one party doesn't like it, we still have to work together when we pass shit. You can't just like be so on your side and then we don't ever get any progress on things. Like, you win some, you lose some. And so to me, in my mind, I was like, helping someone with DACA wasn't like being a hypocrite. To me, it's like, no, this is a means for them to do the shit that I wasn't happy about in the first place. So why wouldn't I help them? Why wouldn't I make them aware of it? I went out of my way to tell them how I didn't like the other shit they did. So why not inform them of this other shit? And so then I like, yeah. So, but they still go like, but you still don't like that they're here, right? And I'm like, not like that. It's more just like, I can see the flaws in that system, and those flaws in the system make me think that we should take care of that problem. It has nothing against certain people in need and shit like that. But, and I'm known people to do the opposite too. That, like, I remember I had a conversation. Oh, and that's another tangent. But, so things like that. That's why I've always liked having like conversations with people, and long ones too. Like even the episode here, like when we talk, usually the first hour is just kind of random conversation, but the second hour is like more like learning about that person's personality and learning more about. I'm never gonna go 3 hours though. I did that once with one chick, and I was just like, oh man.
Well, I guess we're married now.
Just gonna move in and just do all the episodes.
I do think like when we first start, we usually start with like our Patreon, and we start to let loose during the Patreon. And there's been moments where like we don't agree on something, and it can get a little bit like tense or whatever. But for the most part, we agree on things politically, like but I mean, there's every once in a while there's like a little thing that's just like we just don't agree. We don't see eye to eye on something, but it's very rare. I've always wanted to, like, when we talk about this all the time of like seeing a conservative perspective in some of the things that we cover, we never really get to bring in someone that's willing to come on. And not because I think a lot of times there's always that fear of like, oh, you're just gonna have me on to like roast me or make me try to sound stupid or something like that. And it's never been like that. To me, it's never been like that. Like, I legitimately I think most people, we were just talking about the homeless situation. Like, homelessness in California has exploded. Like, it's over the top. And I think it doesn't matter if you're like the most liberal person or the most conservative person. I think I think we both acknowledge that there's an issue there and it needs to be solved. Like, where we come at it from, like, that's going to be the difference. And like, for me, and I think everyone just wants the problem solved. Like, immigration is an issue. It's an issue.
Yes,
whatever
it is.
whether whatever you feel about it, a conservative point or a liberal point. There's people that are like way more liberal than me that are just like, take down the borders and just like let everybody in. And something that seems a little too liberal, but like, and then there's the more conservative people that are like, no, like build the fucking Berlin Wall and like don't let anybody in, like unless they're like name it's Donald Trump or whatever. Like, that's it. That's like the only dude that's a welcome in or type. So it gets a little too polarizing to the point where it's like sometimes in the middle there's that correct answer that we can both find common ground on and like work as the United States of America.
I think what we touched on before was kind of how you're raised can influence how you think and your perception of certain things and how they are. And I think it's the same with politics, where people on both sides, they're the people who get the stage time are the people on the fucking extremes. Someone's knocking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, babe. Oh, come in. It's fine. Whatever. I'll cut it out. All right. Thank you, babe.
Yeah, if you call him in, he's gonna stay here.
Okay. Oh, I'm good, dude. Actually, I have to. I'm holding pee right now, so.
Oh, you want? We'll take a break.
Oh no, that's cool. No, like I'm at that point where it's like I can hold this.
No, I mean, we can take a break and go to the
No,
restroom.
let's keep it going.
All right.
Yeah, because if I pee, then I'm like, all right, guys, you guys ready to party?
Oh, you break
Yeah.
the seal and whatever they call it.
But I guess like to go down that point, like my growing up, the reason why I politically I lean the way I do is because I've gotten to see like both sides of it. So like my grandma on the Aryan side, I guess you could say, right? My grandma's like she's from Canada, right? Like was born and raised there, and then she married my grandfather, and they came to the U.S. Like he was in the military and whatnot, and they came to the U.S. and moved to L.A. And then my dad's side, they're from Mexico, right? So I got to see like both sides of like the immigration process or whatever. And the immigration process for like my grandma who like never became a citizen, like she became like a manager of a bank, like she was like, you know, like this pillar of society or whatnot, right? And like she was like, yeah, like things just seemed to come naturally to me, like it just fell out of the sky. It was like whistling Dixie, whatever, right? And I always just assumed like she was a citizen, right? And she got cancer, and she was like, man, like I need to get this special type of treatment or I'm gonna fucking die. And so she's like, I hate to do this, but I gotta move back home because Canada has better healthcare system than the United States. And then like everybody was like, well, that's only for citizens of Canada. And she goes, oh yeah, I've never given up my Canadian citizenship. Like I'm not a citizen of America. Like I was always just a resident. And we're like, what? And on the flip side of it, like my dad, like all like super Mexican or whatever, right? Insert like desperado music here, right? They very much like tried to get like citizenship, like we're just like pretty much begging for it, right? Like did everything the hard way. Like, you know, his mom, he would talk about how like she had to go to work at like the fields, but then also too had to like go to what's it called, tribal lands and whatnot, like Native American. So his dad's like full-fledged like a Native American, and that's how him and his dad and mom and dad met or whatever, right? I guess my grandma, grandpa, but like very much like had to like just blood, sweat, and tear, like grind it out kind of thing. Like even for himself, like my dad from the time he was 15 till he was 60 something years old, like busted his ass like in the oil fields, like literally busting his back or whatever, and was a fortunate, I think, ripe old age of like 60 something was granted citizenship. And I was like, damn, that's fucked up. Like, so you get to see like all these different sides of the coins. Like, I know people don't like to acknowledge this, but like, yeah, white privilege very much does exist or whatever, right? And then like there is like a situation where like this country, for whatever reason, whatever your feeling might be, like things just seem to be a little bit harder for like minorities than they should be. And that's like kind of like I see things like that and I'm like, man, like we got to make better changes. Like insert, that Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror or whatever, right? And I think when I look at like, Art said this once and it's really resonated with me, where like I don't identify as Democrat because it's like, yeah, Democrats have let me down just as much as like a Republican has. But like I'll definitely say like I'm progressive or liberal just because like the thoughts and ideas that seem right to me jive more that way than they do on the right, because I'm not a millionaire. Like I don't think that Jeff Bezos shouldn't pay any taxes when my mom over here, who's busting her ass like 80 hours a week, has to pay like all the taxes. Like that's something in the system just doesn't jive well on that. So,
and I think coming from my conservative thoughts, it's a lot of things have to do with how you're raised, giving you certain perception, and like you mentioned, the way I see white privilege, it's not like a barcode or a membership or something, right?
By the way, I'm still waiting for my membership card.
It's more of I had conversations with my stepdad about money that I never had with my father, you know. And he was my stepdad was he owned his own business, a construction company. He's from Texas, white guy, very conservative. My father, he would, I think he was a Democrat, very old school dude, Catholic. Um, Never had any really like deep conversations about money with me. He would have conversations about hard life, racism, like how he dealt with racism, just like my kind of like how I ended up in my environment, like conversations about that. But my stepdad, he would talk about money like different, bro. It was just a way of like, it was a game, and it's like, how do you fuck with it to double it, or how do you fuck with it to, and like kind of like the game like you play pogs, you play pogs and you start getting into it and you're like, how do I get more pogs, or what can I use so that I can take more pogs, and then like, oh, and then also, who plays pogs? That fucker can't ever keep his pogs. I'm gonna play that fucker. So you start learning shit and you get into it kind of like a game. And I remember he would to go off on a tangent about him one time. He was talking about, he used to do bids, and he would bid on a construction. He would do big ones like $1 million, $1 billion ones and shit. And so I might be exaggerating about the billion one. I think it was 1.3 billion. I could be wrong though. But anyways, it was a gymnasium. So that sounds like a lot for a gymnasium. Anyways,
It was SoFi.
right? And that was actually a high school one in Brawley,
Oh wow.
in Imperial Valley. But anyways, it might have been 1.3 million, something like. Anyways, it was a lot of fucking money. But the way he talked about it, when he went do those bids, he would talk about how he does the math and how his strategy of how to get the prices that he would get. And then if he lost, where someone bid lower than him, he wouldn't just be like, "Oh, I got beat." He would go over to the table and grab the envelope and look at how their cost was and how they got their total, and he could say like, okay, this is where they're gonna lose fucking money. They're gonna lose money. They didn't even think about the installation of this shit, and new policies are out there that they didn't even take into consideration. They're gonna lose all kinds of fucking money here. Like, go take the fucking job. You fucked it up already. He took joy in that shit. And so I think sometimes when people think about white privilege, they think of like, oh, like it's a membership or something. But no, it's just like really subtle things that you grow up with that you don't, like, even like business, like the way my parents talked about, they own businesses. They're pretty much practically everybody in my family owns some type of small business. And so when you grow up with stuff like that, you think about things a lot different. So I think that's what, like, my conservativeness, like, I would consider myself conservative, is just kind of coming from my parents owning businesses, and then wanting to go to school and just try to get ahead and shit. But as I was doing that, there was things that I was like, fuck, I wish I knew about a savings account, or I knew about index funds and shit like that. I didn't really understand those things. And there's people who are set up with that, and they don't, it's like second nature to them, where they keep their money. Like I've met people who tell me like their parents set up a pretty much like a 401k for them, but it's not set up as a 401k. It's set up as like their individual stock ownings, and so they that's how they get their money. They every month they get their dividends, and then they try not to spend over their dividends so that their money lasts and stuff. And but we're never taught that shit. We're not even taught our taxes, and even like, being conservative and having the background I have, I can listen to liberals sometimes and I just laugh at them. And I'm not laughing at them because they're fucking liberals and they're stupid. It's more just, I don't mean to point at you after you're talking about liberal.
I've had people try to fight me, so I can deal with a point. Man.
But my point was, is that, like, I'll listen to them and I'm like, they don't get it. Like, they don't get it. And if you want to argue about that, you can have it. Oh, we lost it. Like, but we didn't lose anything. You just didn't know what you were fighting for. People always talk. My biggest topic that I tell people is like, they're like, oh, let's raise the taxes on the wealthy. Oh, we raised the Biden's gonna raise the taxes on the wealthy, and you're like you don't get it. Like, you don't hear Trump talking about how he doesn't pay taxes. So what are you talking about that you're gonna raise the taxes? It don't matter what you raise it to. They're just gonna have their friends are gonna pass little shit so that they can move their money a different way, and you're never gonna see it. all those things happen that they tax is people that don't know their money. People who are rich for no fucking reason, you know, like let's say Joe Rogan, you know, gets all that money. He doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what to do with it. He doesn't ever goes, gets an accountant. He doesn't really do much, right? He just lets it stack up in a bank account. And so he's not handling his money a certain way. So yeah, he's making a million, 200 million a year, and he's paying crazy fucking taxes. And he's like, yeah, man, fuck all that shit. Fuck taxes. And it's just like, nah, fool, you need to get an accountant. Your accountant's going to handle all that shit for you. He's going to move all your money. He'll tell you, and once you talk to him, he'll tell you. And going from now on, this is what you need to do. Like my nephew owns a business, and you're like, oh, he probably like, fuck, I'd be worried about what I spend, and like I can't let this business fail. And then he goes and sees my accountant, and my accountant's like, you need to spend another $40,000. Like find $40,000 to spend. And it's like, what? It's like, I spend $40,000. We'll call it a cost for your business. We can then put it on your taxes, and then that reduces. And so instead of just paying taxes, you paid your taxes by buying more shit for your business, which is going to give you capital.
Capital. Yeah, and I get all that too, because like I went to school. Like that's originally what I went to school for, was like, you know, accounting and all that stuff, just because like that's who made all the money, right? Like you watch like VH1's like Behind the Music or whatever.
I got an A in accounting.
Yeah, I did too. Like I have 2 degrees in it, and but like my whole thing was just like, that's how, you know, I want to get out of the hood, right? Like, so I got to find a job that.
That's the biggest lie too that they tell us. Our parents are like, my dad was like, learn about computers and go to school and go to college and get education. That was there was a stint where that was true, but now it's like,
well, you just talked about it on our
you need
Patreon.
a hustle. You need something to make money. Like it seems like anybody I know now who isn't fucking pushing carts got 3, 4, 5 fucking different things they got to do now to make a living, to make their rent.
Yeah, like I mean, it doesn't, like we were talking on an episode we just recorded, like the path that we grew up with is no longer the path that's gonna, you know, guarantee like a nice little middle class life. But I guess like the original point, like I was gonna say, is like, yeah, like that's originally what I got into like accounting, was because like you watch VH1's Behind the Music, and like, yeah, like everyone strives to be like, you know, Motley Crue or Bon Jovi or Aerosmith or MC Hammer or whatnot, right? Like these glamorous like rock stars and whatnot, right? And live like that rock star lifestyle. Even like O.J. Simpson, like his story and whatnot, right? But the guys like that run fucking L.A. are lawyers, accountants, all these motherfuckers or whatever, right? And I think like the sad thing is like, we were just talking about this on the Patreon, is like people want to live like the Instagram lifestyle, and you know, they put themselves in debt to get to that lifestyle. But like when you look at like truly successful people, like say what you will about like Mark Zuckerberg, like he's basically the robot that's gonna kill all of humanity or whatever, right? But like he doesn't like walk outside of his house like in fucking Versace fucking silk fucking pajamas and shit. Like he's dressing probably the same way I'm dressing right now. Like
he's buying out UFC fights.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, he's the whole arena or whatever, right? But he could do that at that point. But I don't know. Like I feel like there's the smart money element too, but then there's also the humanity of it too. And I think that's why I got out of it, of accounting, because it was like you said, it was all a game. And yeah, that game might work for, you know, a Donald Trump or, you know, a billionaire or whatever, but like you look at the human element of it too, where it's just like, I see it every day, like in my job, where it's just like people think that they're playing the game right, and from their 20s all the way up until like when they turn 60, they're like everything's all good kind of thing, right? Not to put too much of it out there so I don't get in trouble, but like then it comes time to where it's like, oh shit, like I can no longer work, or I can't do this anymore, and then they come to my place of work, place of establishment or whatever, and like, all right, take care of me, government. It's like, well, you didn't pay into any of this, so so we can't help you because you didn't help everybody else by, you know, contributing your fair share. So to me, like, there's always that yin and yang. Like, yeah, you can ball out and, you know, play the game and whatnot, and God bless you. I hope that works out for you and whatnot. But a lot of the sad thing is like more people than not, they strive for that. And like you were talking about, like with your stepdad, like those are unicorns. A lot of those people, like they don't exist on every street corner. Yeah, there might be a couple here in Bakersfield or whatever, but a lot of them are striving for that, but they're not that successful at it. And then like when it comes time in their later stages of their years or whatnot, and I see it every single day, where it's just like, oh shit, cheated the game for so quote unquote, and like now your karma's coming back to you, if you will. And it's hard to explain it without getting into too much details or whatever. But I think like life is all about like a balance and whatnot, right? Like you can't keep chasing like that carrot down the hole. To me, because like me becoming like a millionaire tomorrow, is that going to change a lot of my problems? It'll solve a lot of like my financial problems, right?
Yeah.
Which I mean, I don't have any financial problems, but like I'll get all the Jordans that I ever wanted and shit like that. But at the end of the day, like what matters most to me is like making sure like everybody in my life is taken care of, and making sure, you know, that humanity as a whole like is doing well. Like to me, like that matters more than like becoming the next Mark Zuckerberg or whatever. Like I'm
Yeah.
not interested in being a unicorn. I'd rather be just like a cool ass fucking cat. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't give a fuck about anything else like that.
I'd like to get to a point. I mean, not necessarily like with successful in certain things, but definitely whatever I'm doing that makes me happy, having enough money to just do random shit all the time. Just like get up and do shit. Like be very free, you know. Upgrade my chick. Nah, just kidding. Nah, she left. Not
My girl doesn't do that.
That's good. That's a blessing right there.
me and my
We've been doing this podcast for 5 years. My girl has not once came in and gave us chimichangas or